Hey guys, Jules here for Whatculture.com. How are you? Hope you're well. And how are the acoustics here in this bathroom? Are they good? Yes, I know you're watching me while taking a dump, and I love it. Anyway, I'm also here to talk to you about director's cuts, or more specifically, about director's cuts who actually make their films surprisingly worse. Now, we all know that studios just love to meddle with films, and we all know that directors just love pointing fingers at such execs for ruining the original version of their movies. So when director's cuts come out, it's really a put up or shut up time for the minds behind the films, as they finally get the chance to put right what was once wronged. Many of these versions are held up as being the best or the true iteration on the original idea, but the ones on this list, well, not so much. I'm Jules from Whatculture.com, and these are 10 director's cuts that actually made films worse. Number 10, Bad Santa. Terry Swigov's Bad Santa was one of those surprising little comedies that came out of nowhere with little to no expectations and was actually one of the funniest films of 2003. So how does one improve on this low-key great film? Well, Big Terry thought that it would be a good idea to make this version shorter and cut out the opening monologue, which is the only thing that allows us to sympathise with Billy Bob Thornton's awful character. Essentially, this is a far darker, more serious film, if that's possible to make a film like this serious, changing the tone from an outrageous comedy to a relatively depressing character study. Think of it like The Wrestler, but with a mall Santa, which is something I honestly can never say I wanted to see. The original film worked so well because it was a perfect collision of somber undertones and comedic overtones. To see these positions essentially reversed makes for an intriguing but vastly inferior mix that pleases probably nobody except the director himself. Number 9, Donnie Darko. Donnie Darko is pretty much the little engine that could, or did, or is going to do, but a plane crash killed it, so did it ever happen at all? Or, wait, what? Anyway, it's a cult film is what I'm trying to say, thanks in part to the mass swell of support from home video sales. With its meteoric success, director Richard Kelly was given carte blanche to complete the cut of the film that he originally intended to create, reconstituting deleted scenes that the studio encouraged him to cut. Though the addition of these scenes do make the film easier to understand, Kelly fails to realize that in doing so, he also strips the film of its seductive, mystical quality, laying everything out in plainer terms for the viewer. Also, Kelly's biggest crime is to replace the opening song, Echo and the Bunnymen's classic The Killing Moon, with his original choice, INXS's Never Tear Us Apart. Now, to create an iconic moment and then completely destroy it by replacing the music is a crime, though we'll put this down to Kelly being an, at the time, newbie director who couldn't know any better. Number 8, Apocalypse Now Redux. Francis Ford Coppola's hallucinatory, mesmerizing epic Apocalypse Now is already long enough in its theatrical form, running in at a sizable 153 minutes, but his Redux cut, released in 2001, is a whole 49 minutes longer, bringing the runtime to a whopping 202 minutes. And while I love this film, that is too long. Not just in terms of a viewing experience, but also that it just slows the film to an absolute crawl. This can be a good thing in films that balance suspense with payoff, but here it just came across like sheer bloating. The additional scenes are little of real significance and are just mainly curiosities that tell us little things about the characters. Scenes such as the Playboy bunny showing up to entertain the soldiers mid-film seem rather pointless in the scope of the story, and though this reconstituted effort might be the director's favourite version, it's been fiercely debated by the film's fan base ever since. Needless to say, you'll need a real patience and appreciation for the project to make it through, and overall this just simply feels like the director not knowing when to stop. Number 7, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Though Steven Spielberg was one of the very first filmmakers who probably took to making a big deal out of going back and retouching his films, he's also one of the most infamous for making changes that haven't gone over too well with the fans. And in the case of his special edition of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, even ended up regretting it himself. The key mistake is showing the inside of the mothership and having Richard Dreyfuss actually see the aliens, though this was apparently part of a deal that Spielberg made with the studio, who only granted him money to finish this new cut of the film, as he was extremely disappointed with the theatrical cut, if they could use the mothership scene as a marketing gimmick to hook the audience. In other areas, though, the cut is actually superior to the theatrical version, running 3 minutes shorter and cutting a lot of extraneous material. But the mothership scene is simply too much, a result of studio greed, and when Spielberg later created another new cut, he decided to omit this scene. Number 6, The Warriors. Okay, this is a tough one because The Warriors is one of my favourite films, and say it with me, kids, that I owned as a teen, gotcha. I adored this film and its tale of some bad dudes just trying to bop their way back to Coney. It was flamboyant, it was cheesy, hell, it's not even actually as violent as you might think considering the context, but it was absolutely brilliant. Clearly, the minds of Rockstar thought the same as they produced an equally enthralling video game adaptation which not only retold the tale but also surrounding stories as well, such as the all-important question of how Cowboy got his hat. Yep. But it also told the story of what happened before the Warriors were formed. This experience actually influenced the director of the film, Walter Hill, to release a new director's cut around the same time as the game, and which, while having good intentions of combining information that was highlighted in the video game, came across as a little jarring. By this I mean the new comic book-esque panel style really stands out against the film's dark backdrop. Now on this list it's one of the least offensive, but it smacks of a re-release that simply wasn't needed and dilutes the ethos of the film ever so slightly. Number 5. E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Oh, hello, it's Steven Spielberg again, who's up to his old tricks, this time with the 20th anniversary special edition of E.T. This was a release panned by critics and fans for its weirdly desperate attempts to make the film feel more child-friendly. For one, the guns in the special agent's hands are digitally altered to resemble walkie-talkies to downplay the sense of danger to the children. And once again, Spielberg went on record to state that he regretted this decision. I mean, he waited long enough after the sales of the re-release had gone through, but, he still regretted it apparently. What's really strange though is the tonal inconsistency of this cut. Spielberg appears to want to make the whole thing feel more kid-friendly by replacing the puppet with a weird CG overlay who is creepily expressive, but then he also altered the modelling of his spaceship to make it appear more ominous. This weird tonal flip-flopping certainly didn't help it when the director's cut dropped, and it is widely regarded and mocked for being an extremely limp-fingered prod to the heart. Number 4. The Abyss. James Cameron loves to make different cuts of his film, and The Abyss, though one of his lesser appreciated efforts, is probably the most interesting in terms of additional content. The main addition is a lengthy 10-minute scene in which Ed Harris meets with the aliens at the bottom of the sea, and they lead him to a small room where he's shown a TV, and it just has footage of all humanity's worst moments, as well as the premonition of what will likely become of humanity in the way of a giant, bloody tidal wave. Though this scene is interesting, it's a bit bloody on the nose, isn't it? Literally spelling out that humanity is bad and we're all going to get washed away like the flood in the Bible. It just treats the audience like bloody idiots. Because of this blatant approach, it was seen by many to be Cameron pushing his own personal agenda and turned the film from an enjoyable romp to something more akin to a lecture, and worse still, slows the film down to a plod without adding anything worthwhile. Number 3. Dumb and Dumber Unrated. Dumb and Dumber is, unsurprisingly, a lot of dumb fun, yet it's also one of the most tinkered with comedies going. There are at least 3 different TV versions as well as a theatrical cut on DVD, and then this so-called unrated edition, which restores all of the lewd content that didn't make it into the original version. However, this version changes the film in a subtle way, altering the tone for the worse, transforming Lloyd and Harry from goofy, though nevertheless likable schlubs into genuinely creepy douchebags. Not only is the brutality ramped up, we get to hear Mental murdering their pet bird, but some of the funnier scenes are stripped of their ambiguity. When Seabass spits into Harry's burger, rather than cutting to Lloyd's hilariously disgusted face, we actually see the pool of mucus, which is nowhere near as funny and simply revolting. If I want to see disgusting piles of slime, I'll just look to my co-workers. Thank you very much. Possibly the most insidious moment comes when Lloyd and Harry are in the hot tub at the motel, and Lloyd says that if Harry was a woman, he'd split him like firewood. Now this, in the grand scheme, is a pretty throwaway moment, but it really changes their dynamic from silly men being silly to a horrible bit of sleaze that feels out of place and turns their childish nature to something much darker. Number 2. Brazil. Love Conquers All. It's worth prefacing this entry by stating that strictly this is not a true director's cut, given that Terry Gilliam absolutely loathes it, but it is nevertheless an authorized cut of the film helmed by Universal bod Sid Sheinberg and done without Gilliam's knowledge or consent. The cut, nicknamed the Love Conquers All edition, runs a whole 48 minutes shorter than the 142-minute version, completely butchering the beautiful meaning of the film and also altering one of the best and most downbeat endings of all time into something, you guessed it, very, very happy. Because we're all sheep and apparently we demand satisfaction. It's poorly conceived, crass, even going so far as to be irresponsible and disrespectful. One can only imagine the original director's reaction upon seeing the cut, which is nevertheless included on some DVD releases for those who still want to see how badly a studio can destroy a classic film. And number 1, Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope. Was anything else ever really going to be number 1? Really? I mean, when George Lucas began working on writing Star Wars Episode 1 in the late 1990s, he realized that his original film was far from perfect and wanted to bring it up to the standards of current technology by adding scenes, fixing visual effects, and so on. Though some of the CGI additions work, there's one infamous edit, and we know what that is, which had fans up in arms ever since its release, and that's the notion that Greedo shot first. Fans argue that this scene undermines Han Solo's intelligence and ruthlessness, as in the original version he shoots first, cementing him as smart and tactically minded. Here he seems like a wimp who only got lucky that Greedo missed his shot at close bloody range, as otherwise he'd be deader than Luke's aunt and uncle. Also, a scene in which Solo talks to Jabba the Hutt is horribly rendered. An easy complaint to make now, but even upon its release the poor visual effects were endlessly criticised. And yet, in the face of it all, Lucas didn't seem to care one jot, taking all the criticism, putting it in a bin bag and chucking it in the ocean. And there we go, that's our list. Let us know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. But before you go, why not just check out some other stuff that we've got on the Whatculture channel? There's probably some stuff floating about. You have been awesome. Have a fantastic day, whatever you get up to. And as always, I've been Jules. I've already said you've been awesome, but I'll say it again. You've been awesome, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye!